This is your homework. After every meal, take a 15-minute walk. You know what this does? 3 15-minute walks are better for blood sugar control than one 45-minute walk. Most people don't have time. If you have kids, if you have a business, you're in school, 45 minutes is a lot, right? But you can do 3 10-minute walks or 3 15-minute walks. And as you look here, the changes in glucose. Here's the people who just eat and go sit and watch TV. Here's the people in their blood glucose if they eat and they go for a quick walk, okay? Again, try to make it brisk. You sort of, when you're walking, want to be out of breath. It needs to be a little intense. Not so intense that you're dripping sweat all over the place, but you need to get your heart rate going.
Desde hace más de 15 años, ha combinado su educación formal, un título en biología y un trabajo de posgrado en nutrición clínica con su formación atlética y su experiencia en entrenamiento personal para ayudar a otros a mejorar su salud. Mike Mutzel.
Today's episode is brought to you by myoscience.com. As you can tell, we're going to talk a lot about nutrition, exercise, fitness, and one tool to optimize your exercise sessions is the novel creatine-containing electrolyte sticks by Myoscience. This is a product that is unlike many other electrolytes out there. It features red mineral salt paired with creatine, taurine, as well as health-promoting minerals like magnesium, potassium, and clinically meaningful dosages. So this product can be used before your exercise sessions or during exercise to optimize athletic performance as well as hydration. We know that electrolytes enhance the absorption of creatine, and also creatine helps to optimize absorption of water in the body, increasing total body water as well as cellular water. So creatine and electrolytes work synergistically during your exercise sessions. There's over 659 reviews over at myoscience.com. You can check it out over at myoscience.com, which is MYOXCIENCE.com. Use the code podcast to save. Now, in today's show, this is a live seminar from Bogota, Colombia that was recorded in actually about a year ago, August of 2022. I wanted to share this with you here because a lot of people are now talking about COVID. We talk a lot about exercise. We talk about fat loss. We talk about the importance of exercise as medicine. And this conversation was really well received. There was 3,500 people in Bogota. A lot of great feedback from this presentation. So I wanted to share this with you here so that you had some tips and actionable insights about how resistance training specifically burns body fat, the importance of walking after meals to optimize metabolic health. We also talk about protein and IGF-1. There's a lot of controversy about protein being carcinogenic, and it's important to dispel that myth, especially over the age of 60. Actually, higher IGF-1 is inversely correlated with all-cause mortality. So it's important to acknowledge that protein actually may help support your longevity, which I think, in the mainstream media is not being talked about. A lot of elderly folks, people over 60, are not consuming enough protein. So we get into the weeds on all these different conversations and topics. I really hope you enjoy this full-length presentation. If you do, please hit that like button. Be sure to share this video and presentation with a friend, and let's cut to it.
Hola, Bogota. Gracias. I want to thank all of you for being here. It's been a great day so far, and this synergy is just going to continue on because today, in this talk, we're going to talk a lot about exercise, muscle, and improving blood sugar control, which you just heard about. And exercise is a phenomenal way to do that. So I just want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Carlos and the entire team. I couldn't be more excited to be in Bogota. So thank you so much for the hospitality, and let's dive into it. Okay, so we're going to talk about this organ called muscle. It's very important for how you age, how you feel, your cognition, and believe it or not, how long you will live. Muscle is receiving a resurgence. When you think of muscle, people think of bodybuilders and fitness models, but strength and muscle is linked with reduced causes of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease mortality, dementia, even reduced risk of dying from COVID-19, okay? We're going to talk about how exercise is medicine. Exercise is medicine. How's the pace? Is this okay? Slower, faster? Good? Okay. And then I'm going to get into some prescription, give you ideas, tips. I have a little rubber band here. We're going to talk about some ways that you can stay fit at home and stay healthier. Okay. So, muscle is an organ. It's not just for looks. When you move your muscles release myokines, cellular mediators. When you exercise, there are mediators called exerkines that are released, okay? So one way to improve your cognition is to have stimulating conversations, to learn a new language. Playing a piano is good for your brain. What's good for your muscles are moving, okay? It doesn't have to be going to the gym. It can be washing. It can be gardening. It can be picking up your children, taking them to the park, okay? Any movement is better than no movement at all. But when you move, you are changing and causing the release of various hormones and hormone-like mediators that prevent disease, okay? So, 26 diseases are prevented by exercise. I will wager, if you can tell me one drug that prevents 26 different conditions, I will give you $500. Think of a drug. Anyone. There is none. Exercise is one of the most powerful drugs that we all have access to. Okay, sleep obviously is very important. Eating real food is very important. But moving your muscles prevents, you heard about depression. You heard about Alzheimer's, mild cognitive impairment, okay? Of course, fat loss, preventing diabetes is obvious with exercise, as well as preventing cardiovascular disease. In the country of Colombia, the number one cause of mortality is heart disease, okay? This is the number one way that you can prevent the top cause of mortality in Colombia is by way of exercise. So we're going to continue on. There's new research showing that when you exercise, your muscle literally releases these things called extracellular vesicles. And these go to your fat cells and help you burn fat. They go to your heart and help reverse the damage from high blood pressure. Okay, so it's not just about looks. It's about preventing disease and living a longer, more vibrant life, okay? Now, the problem, of course, is we need to encourage people to exercise. Most people, they're right here. They just want the pill. They want the quick fix. Just give me the pill, doc. Where hopefully after today's talk, you'll be right here. You will be wanting to go to the gym, to bring your kids to the park, to lift weights and things like that. So now, I've been guilty of talking a lot about fat over the years. We know having a big belly, having excessive fat is problematic. But when we talk and we demonize fat, it doesn't really give people solutions about how to reduce the fat. So that's why this talk is more focused on improving the health of the muscle, because when you have healthy muscles, you naturally lose fat. Who here wants to lose a little weight? So yeah, quite a few. We all, go through life and we gain a little weight, lose a little weight. Hopefully later today, you'll have the tips to go home with specific exercises and strategies to help lose the weight, okay? But here's what we don't really hear much about is doctors like Dr. Peter Attia talking about how strength and exercise is one of the most powerful ways to prevent death, premature death. Now, I'll share with you why doctors aren't talking about this, but here's a recent clip. Does anyone know Peter Attia? Podcast? Okay, he was on the Andrew Huberman Lab podcast, and here's what he had to say about strength.
So if you look at low muscle mass versus high muscle mass, what is the improvement? And it's pretty significant. It's about 3x. So if you compare low muscle mass people to high muscle mass people as they age, the low muscle mass people have about a 3x hazard ratio or a 200% increase in all-cause mortality. Now, if you look at the data more carefully, you realize that it's probably less the muscle mass fully doing that, and it's more the high association with strength. And when you start to tease out strength, you can realize that strength could be probably 3.5x as a hazard ratio, meaning about 250% greater risk if you have low strength to high strength.
Okay. So it sounds much better when he says it compared to when I say it. He's a physician. He's actually a surgeon. But more and more doctors are recognizing that strength and muscle is very important. Now, here's the problem. Here's why you haven't heard about muscle. It's because it's hard to characterize or define. When we talk about body fat, it's easy to quantify. Do you have excess body fat or not? But when you go to the physician's office, they don't say, hey, Juan, hey, Paul, can you do 100 push-ups for me right here? And they're not going to do that. They just look at your body fat. But I need you to understand that the science is changing. More and more researchers are realizing that we need to quantify sarcopenia. In the US, about 50 to 60% of adults are sarcopenic. And that means they have insufficient muscle mass, which means they're at greater risk of dying from all causes, severe COVID-19, cancer, heart disease, and more, okay? So this is why the medical community is finally starting to quantify strength. I bet in 5 years, you go to the doctor, they're going to test your grip strength to see what your grip strength is, because we now know if you have poor grip strength, you are more likely to suffer premature death and have disease, okay? So this is why you haven't heard about it, but the science is quickly changing. Okay, here's just a few studies to prove to you that exercise is medicine. This study found that it wasn't fat mass that was linked with all-cause mortality and premature death. It was low muscle mass. Low muscle mass. Here's the data right here. I'll go back to my friend. Let me just pause. I insert these little pictures to slow down and to talk. This is a friend of mine, Homi Shivai. At the time of this picture, he was 69. Who would want to look like this at 69? See? Okay, you're in the right room. You're going to learn more about this very soon. He's now 73, and he helps people in their 70s and 80s with weightlifting. These are people that look phenomenal. Their brains are working great. They don't have heart disease, and they're not walking like most 60 and 70, 80-year-olds do, at least in America. Not so much here, but in America, people are really frail. So here's what you see here. There's a stronger inverse association with low muscle and all-cause mortality compared to fat mass. This is important. It's not just about the fat. And I say this because some people are just a little bit thicker. I have some friends, they've been thick a little bit. They'll always be a little bit thicker. It's important to honor your body where it's at, but focus on being fit. It's okay if you're fit and a little bit overweight, but you don't want to be overweight and unfit, okay? Now, as you get older, your muscle starts to decline. And we're going to talk about ways to prevent that soon. One thing that accelerates muscle wasting is poor blood sugar control that you just heard about. So keep that in your mind when we talk about exercise, okay? So the point here, muscle is inversely correlated with mortality over the age of 60. More muscle mass you have, the probability is lower that you will die from all causes. Okay, so here's the thing. We hear so much about saving, investing, your retirement, put money away for your children's college. I encourage all of you, this is your homework. Invest in your strength and your muscle now, because it's naturally going to decline over time. Okay, so that's your homework. Think about what you can do this week to get stronger. What can you do this year to be more physically fit? Because naturally it's going to go down with time, and you want to prevent that. The way to prevent that is with exercise, with movements, okay? Here's an individual who's 85 years old. He's deadlifting over 200 pounds, okay? This is my friend Homi Shivai, his client. So let's watch this individual deadlift 200 pounds, and they're 85, okay?
235, knock it up, don't sway the bar. Gee, man, that was perfect. I mean, not perfect, but at your age, everything you do is perfect. Your walking is perfect. 80 what? 85?
You see, it's not about the weight. It's about what that will give to your mind, that you're stronger, that you feel comfortable picking up your grandkids, that you can move things around your house without walking and being frail. That's what it's about. That's why fitness is so important for a lifestyle habit that you heard about this morning. Eating healthy, moving more, exercising, and pushing yourself in a safe manner physically, okay? We can go on about all the studies, tons of studies, and I just put these in there. I know a lot of you like to take screenshots. Here's another one showing an inverse association and a lower risk of death in people who have muscle versus people who don't. Tons of data. Now, I hope none of you had a soda at lunch today, okay? But since I mentioned blood sugar and you just heard all about blood glucose, we need to understand one of the biggest drivers of loss of muscle is poor blood sugar control. And as you can see in these visuals here, they're a little complex, but glucose and insulin resistance and hyperglycemia accelerates muscle loss and contributes to muscle wasting, okay? So please, no more soda, okay? No more soda. But there's another thing I want to share with you in a moment, but here's the thing about exercise. When you start exercising, and I know some people they hate to exercise, like, oh, I don't have time, I don't like it. When you start to make it a habit, it has translative effects. It carries over into other areas in your life. When you go to the gym, you don't want to have the soda. When you exercise or go for a run or go for a hike, you don't want to go buy donuts. You don't want to go have a bunch of alcohol. And various studies have shown this. Just a few weeks of regular exercise causes people to be less likely to go snack on high sugar junk food. So when you hear about drugs, you hear about side effects. You know, if you ever watch a sporting event in the US, right? Who's ever watched a football game, the Super Bowl? All you hear about is in the commercials, all the side effects of the drugs. This drug may cause death. This drug may cause your ear to fall off. All of these problems with the drugs. Here's the nice thing about exercise. It has side benefits. The side benefit of going on a run tomorrow morning or going on a walk tonight is you're less likely to consume junk food, okay? Junk food is tempting. I get tempted by junk food, but because you make a habit and you change your lifestyle with all of the things you learned today, you're going to be less likely to consume that junk food when you exercise. Okay, very important. This is your homework. After every meal, take a 15-minute walk. Who can do that? We can do that. It's doable. You don't need to buy any equipment. All you do is you put on your shoes and you go for a brisk walk, okay? You know what this does? 3 15-minute walks are better for blood sugar control than 1 45-minute walk, okay? Most people don't have time. 45 minutes, if you have kids, if you have a business, you're in school, 45 minutes is a lot, right? But you can do 3 10-minute walks or 3 15-minute walks. And as you look here, the changes in glucose, here's the people who just eat and go sit and watch TV. Here's the people in their blood glucose if they eat and they go for a quick walk, okay? Again, try to make it brisk. You sort of, when you're walking, want to be out of breath. It needs to be a little intense. Not so intense that you're dripping sweat all over the place, but you need to get your heart rate going, okay? So really important to walk after meals. Now, I've talked a lot about muscle and strength, and we're going to get into the practical nuts and bolts. But there's a major problem, and this is a triad that's a problem. People start to gain weight. Here's an image here. It's called osteosarcopenic obesity. So let's break it down. Osteo, you have bone on this side. You have muscle loss, and you have fat gain. So this is a vicious circle, okay? We have an analogy in Estados Unidos about snowballs, okay? If you have a snowball that starts on the top of a hill, it's small. But as it gets going down the hill, it gets bigger and bigger. So what you have happening here, you start to gain some weight, okay? You gain some weight, and that causes loss of muscle mass, and that weakens your bones, okay? So that when you get older, if you have this vicious cycle occurring, you're more likely to fall and break a bone just walking or doing something simple. We've all had relatives that have broken bones doing nothing, right? And when they get older. Well, why is that? Part of the bone loss is because of reduced muscle mass and fat gain. It's a new vicious cycle. And so exercise helps prevent that, okay? So we want to be able to pick up our grandkids. We want to be able to go into the garden. We want to be able to go to the grocery store and take the bags out of the cart and put them in our car, okay? The way we do that is by stimulating our muscle. It turns out that exercise is also good for the brain. And I did some research here in Colombia. Alzheimer's and dementia, curiously, are not a leading cause of mortality in this country. but they are in the US. And this is a major problem worldwide. And you heard about Alzheimer's disease, dementia, you heard about depression. One of the best things that you can do for your brain is moving muscles. Who here has had a little depression and you go outside and exercise and you feel totally better? Look at this. This is amazing. So this is a natural antidepressant. It's also a natural way to preserve your cognitive capacity. And you might wonder, well, how is it? How can exercise do all this? It's because when you move your muscles release these exerkines and these myokines that go all over the body, and they change gene signaling. You heard about epigenetics earlier today. Exercise is epigenetic medicine. So if you want to preserve your brain, move your muscles, exercise. Now here's the thing. You don't need to go out and buy all this gym equipment. You don't need to invest in a lot of things. You can do stuff at home. As this study found, people do push-ups, jumping jacks. You can do a pull-up. You can do sprints. You can do a lot at home. So I encourage you, and this is your take-home, is figure out the movement that you enjoy doing. Okay? I personally like weightlifting, but there's a lot of people who just do not like weightlifting. I don't want to force you to do weightlifting if you don't want to do it. So think about that. What do you enjoy doing? If you enjoy bike riding, make that your thing. If you enjoy hiking, make that your activity. If you enjoy gardening, make that your activity and try to be active every single day, okay? Really good. We can do a lot of benefits here. Now, let's just spend 5 minutes on COVID. I see a lot of people here in Bogota with masks on, and there's some concern about this novel respiratory virus. Well, did you know that exercise reduced the risks of even catching COVID? It reduced the risk of getting hospitalized with COVID, and exercise reduced the risk of landing in the ICU and dying, okay? Why haven't we heard about exercise? Well, there's one leader, Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, who has been promoting exercise. But let me just share with you the data as it is related to exercise and strength with regards to preventing severe COVID-19. Has anyone seen this study before? Muscle strength is inversely associated with, is an independent risk factor, at reducing severe complications with this virus, okay? Very important stuff. This is actual research. This is data. We should be promoting this for our children, for our vulnerable, for our elderly people, getting them stronger because they're more resilient. Yet another study. I could go on and on. I've reviewed literally on my YouTube channel. Every single study with regards to exercise and COVID is there. If you would like, if you're bored and you can't fall asleep one night, you can just binge watch some of those videos, okay? But tons of data there. Now here's the video that I want you to watch from El Salvador. This is the message that we should be spreading throughout the world if we're serious about preventing or keeping the hospitals from being overfilled and preventing severe COVID-19. Go on.
Mantener un estilo de vida saludable también ayuda a reducir las complicaciones por COVID-19. Los grupos con más riesgo de mortalidad son los adultos mayores y las personas con obesidad, hipertensión, diabetes y enfermedades crónicas. Por eso, pon en práctica estas recomendaciones. Aliméntate saludablemente con una dieta balanceada para acercarte a tu peso ideal. Haz actividades al aire libre. Así respiras aire fresco y recibes algo de sol, lo que tu cuerpo necesita para producir vitamina D. Toma por lo menos 2 litros de agua al día para mantener tus riñones saludables. Reduce el estrés dedicándote tiempo a ti mismo, por ejemplo, haciendo yoga o leyendo un libro. Trata de dormir no menos de 6 horas al día. Incluye cítricos en tu dieta, como limones, naranjas o mandarinas. Evita el consumo de bebidas alcohólicas, alimentos altos en azúcar o en grasas saturadas. Hoy más que nunca, debemos cuidarnos entre todos. Mantente saludable. Gobierno de El Salvador.
Okay. I wish that video went viral. I think it got viewed 6 or 7 million times. It should have been viewed billions of times. Because what did we do? We did the opposite as society. We caused people to be sedentary, to be scared, to be isolated. when we should have encouraged people to be more physically active and reduce their stress, getting time in nature. These are all things that actually have health benefits that make people more resilient. Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts on this. This research just came out today. In the UK, in England, there are more non-COVID excess deaths than COVID deaths as a result of our own policies that had the intention of trying to save people's lives. But locking people in their homes, forcing them to be isolated and lose muscle, gain fat, has consequences. And that's why we're going to focus now on what to do. Now you know that muscle's so important. We're going to talk more about this. One last slide here. We know that staying home doesn't actually make you healthy. You're stressed out, you're eating junk food, you're isolated, you're drinking alcohol. And research, at least in the US, have found that these stay-home orders were linked with fat gain, which again causes muscle loss and bone loss. Not good. Okay. More research here. Exercise. This was in 58,000 individuals. Kaiser Permanente's health data found that regular exercisers have a 42% lower risk of death from COVID-19 compared to people who don't exercise. Okay. Again, we haven't heard much about this, but the data is there. So I want to encourage you when you go home to take this seriously because we have the research. This was yet another study, exercise capacity inversely correlated with COVID outcomes. Okay, they had this data before the pandemic, the exercise capacity data. So it really matters. Again, exercise is a drug. Let's talk about the specifics. And there's one final, somewhat complicated process. I know you've heard a lot today. Epigenetics, you've heard about the brain, you've heard about being socially connected. Okay, one more mechanism for homework. It's called immunosenescence. Let me just make it very simple. Your immune system regulates how well you age. The gray hair, the wrinkles, okay, these are all reparative processes. The faster that you age biologically is linked with what's known as immunosenescence. And it turns out that exercise is a great way to prevent immunosenescence. So you have these immune cells, and these immune cells, they kind of get old and rusty, and they should apoptose and die, but they don't. And they become problematic. And these immune cells start releasing inflammatory signaling molecules. Well, it turns out that exercise is a phenomenal way to purge these bad immune cells, to prevent immunosenescence. And the real world benefits for all of you are more graceful aging, prevention of chronic disease. And it turns out that exercise is one of the best ways to prevent immunosenescence. So in the next 10 years, you're going to hear all about immunosenescence. This is the hottest new sort of biologic mediator in the sort of functional medicine research, is how can we prevent immunosenescence? How can we purge these cells? You have people doing 5-10-day fasts in an attempt to purge these cells. Well, if you regularly exercise, you purge them all the time. So this is why you should be focusing on exercise. And I just wanted to share this data with you because this is the new trend in health and disease prevention. So just to finish up on immunosenescence, let's pretend, if you will, that these cars are the same age. Maybe they're 30 años. Okay, just be with me. One car here, they're the same chronologic age, but they don't exercise on the left, but these people do. So when you get older, okay, when you regularly eat healthy foods like you've learned about today, when you balance your blood sugar, when you work on meditation that you're going to hear more about very soon, you naturally age more gracefully. And exercise is a synergistic modality that helps with this, okay? And it helps with biologic aging. We've all seen people who are young in their 20s. And you're like, you're 20? You look like you're 40, right? Why is that? That's immunosenescence. And this is why exercise is so important. Okay, let's get into the specifics here. Okay, when people think about burning fat, you think about running, cardio, yes? Think about, I have to burn all these calories. Well, it turns out that resistance training, weightlifting, squatting, just, high intensity, but not burning a lot of calories during the actual session. So intense weightlifting effectively helps you burn fat. So I wanted to just, as we get into the practical nuts and bolts here, we're not focusing on burning tons of calories. We're talking about stimulating that muscle with resistance training and with explosive type movements. And one research paper came out last year, 2021, found that just heavy weightlifting was able to release these different intracellular vesicles that help you burn fat, which is great. So the point here, the benefits of exercise only continue to get better. So it needs to become a habit. So stick with what you can habitually do. If it's a walk after every meal, that's your exercise. Just bite off what you can chew. Don't overdo it. Don't think you need to go from no exercise to 7 days a week. Slowly work into it. And the more that this becomes a habit, the more benefits you will experience in your life. So we need to understand that. Okay. We want to focus on compound movements. So, for example, let's say I go to the gym and I'm doing a bicep curl. It's only one joint is moving. A compound movement is multiple joints. Okay, so for example, if I squat right here, what's moving? My knees, my hips. So you want to focus on movements where there's multiple joints moving at the same time. Okay, we can think about a hip thrust, which is featured right here. Does anyone do hip thrusts? Oh, good. Okay, see the hands? People are already doing this, which is phenomenal. The hip thrust is one of the best ways to build your glutes. Your glutes are the biggest muscle in your entire body, okay? And in fact, the leg muscles tend to atrophy first. So I know for guys, you go to a gym, you see guys bench press and bicep curls. That's all they're doing. Okay, even men need to focus on their legs because the leg muscles atrophy first. And there's data from Europe finding that diabetes starts actually in the leg muscle. The insulin resistance starts down here. The upper body musculature can preserve insulin sensitivity for whatever reason. So what that means is that even you men out there who don't really care about your legs because you're not playing football anymore, you still need to do these type of movements. So we're going to get into those. 2 more quick studies. This study, as I mentioned earlier, exercise releases a molecule that prevents coronary artery disease, the number 1 cause of death here in Colombia. Okay, very important. This was resistance training, by the way, as well. And exercise is safe for people who have had a heart attack. It's very important. People who have had a heart issue, they're worried about, well, if I get my heart rate up with exercise, am I going to have another heart attack? What this study actually did is in people who just had a heart attack, they put them in a cardiovascular rehabilitation program. And guess what? The folks that exercised intensely, they're doing this intense exercise, their heart actually recovered better compared to people who just slowly walked, okay? So you can get your heart rate up. You can stimulate that muscle. Your heart is a muscle. It's a muscle that needs stimulation by way of exercise. Okay, practical nuts and bolts, that's all the science. We're going to get right down to what do you do, okay? Choose the activities that you enjoy. You like to walk. You like to hike? Please become a hiker. If you enjoy weightlifting, please start lifting more weights. But I encourage all of you to do some form of resistance training, okay? It can be with a band, like I just showed you. It can be pull-ups. Remember, the pull-up is a multi-joint movement. You're moving your elbows and you're moving your shoulder. So think about compound movements. When you're picking an exercise, think about how many joints are moving. You want to move 2 or more. Okay, it doesn't mean you never do bicep curls. It doesn't mean you never do leg extensions, but you want to focus on the compound movements. Then you can finish with those more isolation movements. So ideally, in an ideal world, everyone in this room would do some sort of resistance training 3 days per week. Who here can do 3 days per week? I see a lot of hands coming up. Even if you can only do 2, that's still good. But ideally, 3 to 4 days per week of resistance training. It can be 20 to 25 minutes. The time of day doesn't matter. You can do it in the morning. You can do it after work. You can do it at lunch, okay? You're trying to stimulate every major muscle, okay? So you do some pull-ups. You do some pressing. You do some squatting. Okay, you do some hip thrusts. And I'm going to share with you examples of this very shortly. And it doesn't mean because you go to the gym, then you have to have a protein shake. You just heard about protein. As long as you're meeting your protein requirements, and if you're lifting weights and active, I recommend about 1.4 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. That's a good target for a lot of people. But let's get into the practical stuff here. So this is a woman who has a barbell on her back, okay? So there's so many different things that you can do here. You can squat, you can lunge like this, really good for the glutes, good for the hamstrings, okay? You're activating a lot of different muscles when you lunge. You can take your kids and you can lunge with your kid, right? You can take the groceries and lunge with the groceries. You can squat. You can do air squats, right? You can squat and pause. There are so many different variations that you can do without a gym. But we need to focus on more than just this. And I see a lot of people, they have a band on the internet, doing the booty stuff. 1, 2, 3. It's okay. It's okay, but it's better to actually squat. It's better to actually lunge and get into it. The booty stuff and the bands, you can do that after you do your compound movements. Does that make sense? Okay. This is the hip thrust. Very important exercise, especially for people who have low back issues. Because if you load up your spine and you go to squat, that can hurt some people's back. And the hip thrust is a great way to activate your glutes, your quads, and your hamstrings. And the good thing is you don't have to have a lot of weight here. You can do this on your couch, okay? The idea is you're just moving from the hip right there. You're pivoting from the hip, which also has a bunch of benefits in terms of glute activation. Again, your biggest muscle. And by the way, even you guys, everyone's looking at your butt. It's true. It's true. We focus on our abs and things, but people are looking at your butt. So you want to have a strong butt. A strong butt is linked with less low back pain, less issues. So you want to stimulate this. It really does help. Here's another variation of the squat, okay? We saw the woman with weight on her back. You can load it on the front. You can take a couple bricks and do front squats like this. It's a different variation. You can get very creative with this. And again, do the exercises that you like to do, that you enjoy. I'm just giving you a few examples. Here's a woman in her office, okay? That walk, remember I mentioned after you eat a meal, go for a 15-minute walk. Your walk could be a few exercises in your home office or at your workplace. This is called a Bulgarian split squat. The idea is you put one leg elevated and you're basically doing a lunge. This is a great exercise to test your balance as well. Because if your balance is not so good here, now, if you're 40 or 50, how is it going to be when you're 60, 70, or 80? It's not going to get better if you don't work on it now. So this is a great exercise, Bulgarian split squat. The pull-up. I love the pull-up. This can be done anywhere. There's a lot of gyms that have pull-ups outside. There's gyms in parks and so forth. And if you have trouble, if you've never done a pull-up, I would suggest investing in a band like this. See how she has part of what is helping her and could help you with the pull-up is you hook this, you just loop it around the pull-up bar, and you put it around your legs. And that can help you get stronger and more proficient at pull-ups, which are a phenomenal exercise for your arms and for all of your upper back muscles. Very helpful. Okay, we can go on about all the specifics, but I encourage you to invest some time on YouTube and figure out some exercises that you like. And in the next 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to talk about feeding and fasting and talk about how actually exercise makes fasting more effective. Okay, this is really important. So you just heard about autophagy. You just heard about fasting, OMAD, 16-8. There's all sorts of modalities when it comes to fasting. So which one is the best for you? Well, here's what I like to share with people, because a lot of people want to know, well, how long do I need to fast in order to get the benefits? And the answer to that is not as straightforward. It actually depends upon how much you exercise. What this study found, and they looked at markers of the process that you just learned about known as autophagy. Okay, autophagy increases when you fast. people who exercise have a greater increase in autophagy compared to people who do not exercise. So it's kind of a nice little hack. If you don't like fasting, I love food. I don't know about you all. We all love comida, yeah? So if you exercise, you don't have to fast as long. So check this out. This is in the black bars, right? You have the untrained individuals. This right here is a marker of the effect of fasting. The individuals who are not trained, after 36 hours, they finally start to get this increase in the autophagy. Compared to people who are physically fit, this increases just after 12 hours. So you don't have to be as aggressive with fasting if you exercise, which I think is good for a lot of people because a lot of people love to eat, and with family and the kids, it's hard to fast and do all this stuff. And so if you're regularly exercising, you can get away with just a 12-hour fast every day or a 14-hour fast. You don't have to do a OMAD. You don't have to be as extreme with it, which is nice. But the type of feeding protocol that I particularly enjoy is, and it's hard to talk about this in Latin America because most people don't start going out and eating until 8, 9, 10 o'clock, yeah? But early time-restricted feeding has a lot of benefits. So if you can eat earlier in the day and start your fast earlier in the evening, there's a lot of health benefits linked with that. One particular study looked at women and found that women, they randomized them into two different groups. They had both groups eat 600 calories after dinner. But the group that had the 600 calories right before bed, they gained more weight compared to the group that had the calories right after dinner. So the earlier that you can eat and cut off your feeding window and start your fast, the better it is for your metabolic health, for preserving muscle and losing fat. Okay, a lot of benefits here with fasting and time-restricted feeding. These are synergistic modalities with preserving lean mass, with preventing fat gain. I recommend 2 to 3 meals per day, depending upon how physically active you are, and early time-restricted feeding as a protocol, okay? Now, there's all sorts of different modalities, and I just quickly, you just heard about fasting, so I don't want to go into this too much, but again, the TRF right here has some of the most benefits, so that's why I generally steer people more towards that. And we're going to talk about why chronically dieting is not a good idea. We've heard a lot about calories in, calories out, and well, the best way to lose weight is just to go on a diet. But what the research actually shows is many weeks after the study end, this was a study in Colorado. It was just a 12-week study, 3 months. And then about almost a year later, the researchers looked at the resting metabolic rate of people who just went on a diet. You know, they ate lettuce and low-calorie foods compared to people who fasted, who ate normally but in a smaller window. And there was changes in metabolic rate and muscle mass at even 32 weeks later. So I encourage you, just as a tip, instead of trying to diet and eat lettuce and low-calorie, focus on eating more nutrient-dense real food, but compress your feeding window because the long-term health benefits are there. Okay. Now, we're talking about building muscle. We're talking about protein. You just heard a lot about protein. I recommend, again, between 1.4 grams of protein per pound of body or per kilogram of body weight, up to 1.6 grams of protein per kilo. And you've heard about protein. Well, doesn't it cause cancer? Isn't protein going to rot my liver? What about my kidneys? You're probably concerned. There's a lot of stigma surrounding protein, particularly red meat. But that stigma is actually not warranted by peer-reviewed academic research. And so what I want to share with you is just to help you not be scared about eating protein, because you need protein for the new weightlifting and all the exercise you're going to be doing after leaving this conference. You're going to need to increase your protein. And this study, a relatively poorly designed study, got a lot of attention and caused people to think that protein is really bad, because what protein does, supposedly, is raises IGF-1 and causes cancer. However, what you don't hear about is IGF-1 is actually protective. IGF-1 increases when you exercise. IGF-1 helps with dilation and endothelial nitric oxide. Okay, so there's this link between protein, IGF-1, and cancer. It's not as sound as many people think. So I don't want you to be scared about when you tell your spouse when you go home, hey, honey, we're going to have more protein. And they're like, ooh, cancer, right? I want you to remember it's not as clear cut as the media has made it out to be. So there's actually there's a U-shaped curve. People with low IGF-1 are at just as high of odds of dying from cancer and other causes compared to people who have very high levels of IGF-1. So you've heard about today, it's about balance. Okay, it's about balance. So eat enough protein, but not excessive amounts for your level of activity. If you don't exercise that much, you don't need a lot of protein. You just need sufficient amounts, again, that's corroborated by your activity levels. Okay. More data on IGF-1. I have 3 minutes left. So here's some foods that I like to eat before an exercise session, before lifting, after. This was actually with Barbie Keto Santiago. So we had some amazing foods in Chile. So here's just an example. Eggs, avocado, lower in carbohydrates, healthy real fats. We are having steak made on an open flame in Chile. So cooking real food that your ancestors would have cooked 50, 60 years ago. Okay, so that's what we want to focus on. Real food helps you prevent muscle loss. Okay, last 2 minutes here. Just this has nothing to do with muscle necessarily, but one other thing to think about, okay, is getting hot and going in the sauna. There's a lot of reasons why people gain fat, and one of the newly emerging mechanisms around fat gain and all of this is chemicals in the environment. So I just wanted to share this with you. A phenomenal paper finding that the two main sources of chemicals that lead to fat gain are our cleaning products and skincare products, these perfluoroalkyl compounds. So when you go to the grocery store, look at the back of the bottle. Try to buy compounds, cleaning products, skincare products that are more organic, that don't have the parabens and the perfumes that are linked with fat gain. And another benefit linked with exercise is it causes detoxification. Sweating is detoxifying. You're releasing stored compounds that are problematic. So there's multiple benefits here, but this paper, if you love to read and geek out, I think you would really enjoy this paper. Okay, I want to finish up here with sauna. Getting hot. Does anyone sauna? A few people. Okay. Sauna and exercise go together, like Forrest Gump said, like peas and carrots. This is like peanut butter and jelly. Okay, so you can go exercise and get sweaty and hot and then go in the sauna. And there's a lot of health benefits for your heart, for your brain, for preventing Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease. So another thing to think about as you're changing your lifestyle after this conference is getting hot on purpose. And part of getting hot on purpose is by way of exercise. Who's done hot yoga? Yeah, you sweat, right? You're releasing all these chemicals that are in our environment. So I just want to thank you for staying all the way through. Hopefully you found this helpful. And remember, your muscle depends upon stimulation by way of exercise. If you don't use it, you will lose it, which naturally happens as you age. So your homework is to move more, walk after meals, get hot on purpose. And I want to thank you for being here. Have a great day.